My co-defendant was just sentenced to 60 months in federal prison, exactly what the government asked for. I was next. Right before I got sentenced, Judge Wilson said, let's take a break for lunch. Let's come back in about an hour. It was apropos, I think, because I'd waited 3.5 years. What's another hour? While my friends and family were having a little bite to eat before my sentencing, many of them said, I still don't think Judge Wilson is going to sentence you to prison. You're a good person. You didn't have bad intentions. The government just acknowledged your co-defendant was more culpable. He just got 60 months. You're not going to jail, right? I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to jail either. I didn't have bad intentions. I kind of told them what I wanted them to hear, but over a period of 3 years, I think I had convinced myself foolishly, stupidly, naively that I was different, that Judge Wilson would see me differently than my probation report, that the prosecutor, Byung-Soo Kim, would see me differently than the victims saw me. They would see me as a good person who did not have bad intentions, and for that reason, even though I pled guilty, I would not be going to prison. Well, as we know, about 75 minutes later, Judge Wilson sentenced me to 18 months in federal prison. I share this story because I am not alone as a naive white-collar defendant who thinks I'm special. I'm so special. I'm special. I'm not special. I was a criminal. I broke the law. Sonny Balwani is heading down a path that is going to send him to prison for a very long time. All we have to do is look at the playbook. We just have to look at what happened. This great quote from Santayana in 1905, who said something like, those who don't understand the past are doomed to repeat it. Balwani appears to be totally ignoring exactly what happened in the Elizabeth Holmes trial. His defense is going to be exactly what her defense was. Let me summarize it for you very quickly. He is going to blame her just like she blamed him. He is going to claim it is not fraudulent for a business to go belly up. That doesn't mean fraud existed. They will acknowledge there are some misrepresentations in raising money in Silicon Valley. His defense is going to mirror exactly what he did. If anything, he's probably emboldened because he is probably convincing himself, one, I was rich before I started there, so the fraud began before I joined. Two, she was the CEO, convicted on 4 of 11 counts, which, by the way, is a total home run for the government. I'm shocked when people insinuate that perhaps it was not a win for the government. No chance. Home run, slam dunk for the United States government against Holmes. So he may be emboldened to take this all the way. Well, here's the problem. I read earlier today that Elizabeth Holmes most likely will not be sentenced until Balwani's trial is over. What does that mean? Well, I know all of you are astute observers of this case, as is our team at White Collar Advice and Prison Professors. And by the way, here's the shameless plug to like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your engagement, for commenting and liking. We're so grateful that you rely on our team as a trusted resource. If you look at the thousands of comments our team has received on the Prison Professors and White Collar Advice channel about Elizabeth Holmes, what are some of them? Many of you say she's narcissistic, she's insane, she's a criminal, you hope she spends decades in prison. Many of you were disgusted that she wasn't immediately remanded to prison after she was convicted. A lot of rage out there. A lot of you have also addressed the reality that she's opportunistic. She will say and do whatever she can to help herself. Well, now that she's convicted, a convicted felon with a young baby, looking at many years in federal prison, she has choices. She potentially has opportunities. That opportunity could include cooperating against Balwani, who's inching towards trial. Yes, she doesn't have as much leverage. If she had done this before she was convicted, pled guilty and cooperated, she would have had much more leverage, no question. But it is not unfathomable to think that as he's going to trial, she could try to cut a deal, cooperate against him, which could, of course, lead to a potentially shorter prison sentence. The value for the government, even though they probably don't need her to get a conviction, less time, fewer resources invested in preparing for this Balwani trial. Perhaps if she cooperates and cuts a deal, she will forfeit her right to an appeal, which again would save the government time and money on an appeal, and in turn they could ask for a shorter prison sentence. With all of that said, I suspect he's inching towards trial. It's noon on Tuesday, January 11, 2022. Happy New Year to all of you. And I presume Balwani and his lawyers are scheming and thinking right now about what they can do to try to prevail at trial and keep himself out of prison. I'm going to talk about that in this video today, so let's get started. So if Balwani is looking to get the shortest prison sentence, what can he do? Well, obviously he can be acquitted at trial. Certainly can happen. Odds are against him, but it could happen. Secondly, he could do things totally differently than Elizabeth Holmes did. And I think to this Seinfeld episode where George Costanza went up to this woman and said, "Hi, I'm George. I'm short, bald, and I live with my mother." In that episode, he did the exact opposite of what he was inclined to do. If Balwani can do the exact opposite of what Elizabeth Holmes has done, he positions himself to stay out of federal prison. The exact opposite. So let's dive into our trusted screen share. This is a blog our team will put up at White Collar Advice. If you'd like to read the whole blog, simply go to whitecollaradvice.com. We know if he goes to trial, he is only going to blame Holmes. If his goal is to remain a multimillionaire, even if he were to plead guilty and pay some money back, they're not going to leave him penniless. As a reminder, Ruth Madoff, Bernie Madoff's wife, was left with a penthouse in New York and $1 million. If he were to accept responsibility and plead guilty, they are not going to leave him penniless. So rather than just blame Holmes, which is what he would be inclined to do if he went to trial, he could take a fundamentally different approach, which is not even talk about her if he were to plead guilty. He can say, regardless of what Holmes did, regardless of the misrepresentations that she made and was found guilty by a jury, regardless of what she did, Your Honor, or Mr. Probation Officer, or Mr. Prosecutor, are you skeptic watching this on YouTube? Regardless of what she did, let me tell you what I did. I did wrong. I knew better. Regardless of what others were doing, I had a responsibility to do better. Indeed, I had an experience and background as a Silicon Valley investor and entrepreneur to do better. So while Ms. Holmes made her own decisions and she chooses to blame others, I only blame myself, and I am sorry. Now, some of you may be thinking that will be insincere. He won't feel it. Yeah, there's some truth in that, perhaps. Sometimes defendants say what they have to say to try to get the shortest sentence. It may take some time for them to fully understand the depth of their problems or how they hurt people. It is easy to focus on how, our own life is imploding and falling apart. It takes some time. I didn't fully get it till I went to prison and I was standing for count, separated from family. He may say it only because he wants to avoid prison, but in time he may actually feel it. Continuing on, if he goes to trial, of course, he's going to say exactly what Holmes said. Again, like his defense is simply going to mirror hers. And like I said, he probably thinks he's in a better position because she founded it. She was the CEO. He was not. He came on at a later time. So if he goes to trial, he'll say the same rhetoric. I didn't have bad intentions. However, if he's looking to keep himself out of federal prison, he could take a different approach. He could take the George Costanza approach, which is to say, when I joined Theranos, I believed in the vision. I did not have bad intentions. I had had success previously, but in time, there were failures. And rather than address and own those failures, we lied. We created financial presentations or projections that were untrue. And as the leader in creating those projections, I knew they were untrue. And I rationalized that in time these projections would come true. We simply needed more time. I knew when making presentations to investors that they would be hyped to invest because of the fear of missing out and our marketing and all the hype behind the company. In retrospect, I knew better. Can you hear how that approach is just fundamentally different? How that would impact a prosecutor or probation officer, how different it is. Yet he is probably going to go down the same path as Holmes and inch towards trial. And because of that, get 2 or 3 times longer in prison than if he took this advice. If he began to acknowledge things that I'm addressing in this video, which is, I knew better. I knew better. You just say that 5 times, Mr. Balwani. I knew better. I knew better. I knew better. It's stunning how many defendants are unable to do that because they do think they're different, or lawyers or sycophants are convincing them that they are right and that you have to have intentions to be convicted and that the jury's going to see you as a good person. They get convinced by a number of people despite the overwhelming evidence of how many people get convicted at trial. Continuing, Balwani, if he goes to trial, like Holmes, will argue business failure is not a fraud. Again, he could probably take a different approach if his goal is to keep him to get the shortest sentence or not go to federal prison at all, right? So rather than address the obvious, well, I'm sorry, failure is not a fraud, obvious to his lawyers, he could say it differently. Not only did we fail, we committed fraud in the process, a double whammy. Again, Your Honor, probation officer and prosecutor, I knew better. And it's stunning how many defendants won't actually do that. So as I kind of wrap up this video, I'll address some of the other obvious things he could do if he were to plead guilty. Besides accepting responsibility, he absolutely should pay back some money. We know Elizabeth Holmes was found guilty of 4 of 11 counts. The investor losses are around, I believe, $150 million, a lot of money, going to be very high in the sentencing guidelines. If he's in a position to make a significant payment towards restitution, it would influence the judge. It would influence the recommendation the government would make. Additionally, he should be working, creating a new record as a law-abiding citizen. These cases can take years to play out. It's stunning how many defendants get into trouble and they just stop working. 2, 3, 4 years go on. They just stop working. I know some sentencing judges will ask a defendant, like, so what do you do all day? You've been sitting at home for 3 years? You're not working? Well, Your Honor, it's COVID and it's tough out there. And I used to be a doctor and a lawyer and I lost my license. You know what some judges think? I don't care. Other people find a way to work. You should be working, saving money for restitution, paying your bills, demonstrating that you can earn a living as a law-abiding citizen. He should be working. He should be paying back the money. He should be contributing to his community. But more important, he has to be able to say to a prosecutor, probation officer, and judge, as I close this video on how Sunny Balwani can get a shorter prison sentence, how Sunny Balwani can do things totally different than Elizabeth Holmes right out of the George Costanza playbook. Think differently. There's a great book you should read by Malcolm Gladwell called David and Goliath. And in that book, he addresses how, like, over the last few centuries, how a third of the wars have been won by underdogs. Well, why? They thought differently. They didn't go head to head. They took a different approach. So the obvious angle, of course, is blame, 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 blame. It's going to lead to a big L, a big loss, like Holmes. If he thinks differently, begins the healing, gets his head out of the sand, and doesn't think that he is different, as I thought that I was different. If he can do that, he positions himself for a shorter prison term, a better life, and he should probably get there quickly, because if Holmes is opportunistic as some people think, if I were her, I'd be jockeying to try to cooperate, to cut a deal, because I assure you she doesn't want to go to prison like he doesn't want to go to prison. I welcome your feedback, your comments, your criticism. If you don't like what I'm saying, that's okay. We always want to do better. But I'm so grateful you continue to come to our team as a resource, and we look forward to returning soon with more updates on Sunny Balwani, Elizabeth Holmes, and the drama that is Theranos. Be well, be safe. Goodbye.